Has it only been a week since our last intersection? I'm Michael Popok. You're on the MeidasTouch Network. So much has happened. I'm exhausted from the Labor Day weekend and judges working overtime to rein in Donald Trump. Emergency duty judges like Sparkle Suknanen. You're going to hear more about her today. And then other judges like Judge Breyer, who seems to have worked all weekend to finish his 52-page decision, finding that Donald Trump and the Department of Defense violated one of our most sacrosanct protections against a rogue president, the Posse Comitatus Act, after a trial. And we've got a press conference tomorrow of the Epstein victims, at least 10 of them, being hosted bipartisan fashion. We have a Republican congressperson. We've got a Democratic congressperson joining together with 10 victims who are there to declare once and for all two things. We are not a hoax. And secondly, release the damn files. So there's an update in the Epstein matter. Donald Trump's health crisis. See, Meidas created a Meidas Health. Boy, that was fortuitive. That was like when they originally formed that channel, I was like, that's sort of interesting. Interesting when you've got an aging president who denies that he's falling apart when to all reasonable observers he is, both mentally and physically. I mean, the fact that Pete Ducey I always want to mispronounce his name. The fact that Pete Ducey on Fox had to start a press conference question the following way. Where were you when you found out you were dead, Mr. President? Between that and J.D. Vance, who was, I think, trying to solve for the problem of Donald Trump's failing health, but only made matters worse when he made the following statement. God forbid anything happens to him. I'm ready to take over. I mean, that would be the equivalent of Lyndon Johnson before Kennedy left for Texas saying, I don't know what's going to happen at the Texas Book Depository, but I'm ready to take over if anything does happen. Yeah, we're going to cover the health scandal, which is on top of the Epstein scandal, which is on top of the tariff scandal, which is on top of the everything else scandal, all related to Donald Trump. And the polls show it. We're going to be crashing below the 30% approval rating soon. You wouldn't know it to watch Donald Trump. Well, it's very hard to watch Donald Trump because there's allegations of phony photos, AI-generated photos of him at a golf course. There's where was he for 4.5 days? Why was the big press announcement about moving the Space Force from Colorado to Alabama? Are we watching a wag the dog moment where he blows up a Venezuelan drug ship and kills 11 people to reinforce this phony war we have with Venezuela and to distract attention from his failing administration? I've said it before. I'll say it again here on the intersection. Donald Trump politically times events like starting wars, bombing Iran, bombing Venezuela, releasing the Maxwell transcripts in order to step on horrible news stories and news cycles. And this weekend was a horrible set of news cycles, which I'm going to talk about. We had Judge Suknanen ordering 76 children who were put on a plane at 1 o'clock in the morning without due process, let alone an adult, to be shipped back to Guatemala in violation of their refugee status. So he had that order. He had today in the morning when we all woke up. I was shopping in a supermarket this morning for my family, covering part of the domestic tasks here as my wife takes care this morning at kind of a preschool for our daughter. I was picking out melons when I get an urgent alert on my phone. My phone blows up about Judge Breyer up in San Francisco coming out with the first time in U.S. history, a pronouncement, a trial verdict that Trump and the Department of Justice violated the Posse Comitatus Act. Then you had later in the week, as we led into Labor Day, we had the 7-4 decision by the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals that totally destroyed 2/3 of Donald Trump's tariff scheme, which he's based the entirety, apparently, of his economics and economic model on. And so now we're at war with Venezuela. You see where this is going? I want to talk about the health scandal the Epstein press conference for tomorrow and what's going on in Congress now that they finally got back from their summer vacation. What did you do on your summer vacation, MAGA? I hid from the press and the people that elected me. I hid from my responsibility to do oversight over this administration. I hid from my responsibility to release the Epstein files and to make sure that children have been protected and haven't been trafficked. I mean, we just had a ruling by Judge Suknanen, effectively, that the Trump administration, as more likely than not, violated statutes against torturing children and trafficking children. I got an update about the Abrego Garcia matter, a new gag order that's being considered by a judge as they pulverize him in public. You've got Kristi Noem complaining that her 60 Minutes interview or her Meet the Press interview was edited because she didn't get to continue to bash and malign this person who is a criminal defendant who's entitled to be presumed innocent. Abrego Garcia, they cut me off. I didn't get to talk about his child predator conduct. And so we're going to talk about all of these things, including Donald Trump's fundamental attempts to create a standing army of his creation against our Constitution, heck, against our Declaration of Independence, to support him. All on the intersection with Michael Popok. I'm glad you're here. For those that are here, we usually get a couple 100,000 people watching this new podcast. Help stand it up. Help support it. Hit the free subscribe button here. Listen to us on audio podcast platforms as well. And then, of course, my main work is on Legal AF, all things Legal AF. The YouTube channel, subscribe there. The Substack, subscribe there, and the like. All right, let's get into it. Let's start with the health scandal swirling around. When was the last time a president had to deny that he was dead? I mean, that is the question that was asked. You even have right-wing extremists like Nick Fuentes saying something's going on with Trump's health. This is a guy who met with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago, who's a white nationalist, who supports the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers. He's now questioning whether there's another scandal. Because let's be frank, MAGA loves a conspiracy theory. And we've got one now with the health crisis. He is falling apart before our very eyes. The Trump administration keeps trying to cover for Donald Trump's failing health. Well, he's got a vein issue. The blood doesn't flow back properly from his legs to his heart. That doesn't explain the mottled hands they try to cover with makeup. That doesn't explain the muddied thinking that they can't cover up with his incoherent, grammatically incorrect postings in the middle of the night or all hours of the day. That can't explain his inability to walk in a straight line like he's failed a DUI test. That doesn't explain the grainy photos that they try to show us as we joke on the MeidasTouch Network, the proof of life photos. He's still alive. It looked like the Loch Ness Monster. It was this pixelated, blurry photo. Pardon me. They have a presidential photographer who can take a decent shot. How about a staffer with an iPhone if they weren't trying to cover up? I mean, look, the Princess of England, Princess Kate, took a lot of flack when she tried to cover up her cancer crisis with these phony photos that were AI generated that showed she only had 4 fingers or, like weird disjointed ankles. Same thing's going on now with Donald Trump. The fact that Nick Fuentes is saying something's up. The fact that Pete Ducey at Fox had to ask, when did you learn you were dead? The fact that people like Lev Parnas, who was close to Donald Trump, is learning that if he's not dead, he's dying. How else would you explain J.D. Vance? But he's the gift that keeps on giving, isn't he? Every time he goes on television, he makes the matter worse. He's the reverse MeidasTouch. Since they're trying to steal MeidasTouch from MeidasTouch, he's the reverse MeidasTouch. Everything he says turns to crap. They send him on to try to tamp down the Epstein story. And he goes on and tries to blame Joe Biden, which leads everybody to say, including Elon Musk, release the damn files. Can't blame Joe Biden for it. You're still sitting on them, just as all the federal judges have said. Then they trot him out to address the health crisis, which is a crisis. We don't get any Surgeon General report about his health. No personal doctor. Nobody at Reed Memorial Hospital, the Naval Hospital, giving us a report on the president. We get spoon-fed. Well, he's got a vein problem. Well, how do you explain the rest? Look, you either believe that he was the subject of an assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania, and something hit his ear, or you don't. But if you believe that a piece of shrapnel or a bullet hit his ear, are we seeing the effects of that now? 11, 12 months later? I mean, if you believe it happened, that was a concussive event that rattled his brain in his brain cage. Are we seeing the effects of it now? Since he tried to deny it and use it in order to get elected, tough guy Trump, but are we seeing the effects of it now? And no amount of makeup and J.D. Vance saying, well, God forbid anything happens, I'm ready to take over. Oh, really? It's all right. It's okay. But that's not helping. And the reason we focus on the health is because Donald Trump is lying to the American people about the condition of his health. And we can see it with the phony photos. And as I said at the top, the conspiracy theories, MAGA loves a good conspiracy theory, and they're probably getting fatigued with Epstein. So they're moving on to, is Donald Trump dead or alive? Wanted, dead or alive, President Trump. I mean that in a health condition. So let me move on the intersection now that we've fully talked about the health crisis and Donald Trump's attempts to minimize and take away the story of the health crisis by starting a war with Venezuela, claiming that there was a drug cartel boat and therefore he had to bomb it and kill 11 people. Again, the exquisite timing of Donald Trump to take something off his shelf to distract from a failing economy and a failing administration. So now we turn to Epstein. Where are we? Let's take stock. Let's take inventory on September the 2nd. Where are we? Okay. We were promised the Epstein files in their entirety. By Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, proxies for Donald Trump in February. This is now September. They thought they could feed us the grand jury transcripts and that load of lies. That didn't work. They thought they could dribble and drabble out files, and that didn't work. And now even Republicans are upset. Besides the fact that it completely undermined the FBI and the Department of Justice and led to tremendous firings and turnover there, and people's careers are on thin ice. I'm looking at you, Dan Bongino, deputy FBI director. Now you have Representative Massey and Representative Khanna. Representative Massey, a Republican, who are holding a press conference tomorrow, which we're going to have live on Legal AF, a press conference tomorrow with at least 10 victims who are going to be there to declare, we are not a hoax. We are not boring details. We were the victims of child sex trafficking by a best friend of Donald Trump named Jeffrey Epstein and by Ghislaine Maxwell. And they're there, I'm sure, to refute and to stop these attempts to rehabilitate Ghislaine Maxwell in order for Donald Trump to get a pardon. I mean, the information that we're getting is that Trump is working his acquaintances and his accomplices to try to make the Epstein story go away and to give him a runway to give Ghislaine Maxwell a pardon. It's important to hear from the victims who have been victimized all over again in all of these proceedings. They've been forgotten, and they shouldn't be. They're now strong women. They were girls when these events happened, but they have a vested interest in justice, as we should all. So the Epstein press conference tomorrow, but side by side with that press conference, again, we'll have it up live at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern time on Legal AF. But in addition, we've got a motion that has been proposed, they're already looking for what's called a discharge vote in Congress, led by Representative Massey and Representative Khanna. They need 218 votes to get the Epstein files issue out of committee and to the House floor for a vote to discharge it from committee. You need 218 votes. They're going to get awful close. 212 Democrats are going to vote for it, right? Massey's going to vote for it. That's 213. So therefore, they need 5 more votes. And Massey is sure. He's pretty confident he's going to get those 5 votes. I think tomorrow, where we'll be announcing that the discharge vote has happened, a procedural technique to get something out of committee, which is the issue of the release of the Epstein files and other orders related to Epstein out of committee and to the House floor. That's where it belongs, for the American people to see how the Republican MAGA are operating before the midterm election. There's a lot of things at the intersection of law and politics that are all sort of coming together. You can see it now for the midterms and Donald Trump's political suicide mission that he's on and taking the rest of the MAGA Republicans with him. Health will be a major issue, not just his, but the health of America. We got RFK Jr., an incompetent, a conspiracy theory advocate, an admitted drug addict, anti-science, anti-medicine, who is running all the things like the Center for Disease Control and making public health guidelines and announcements. Who gets COVID vaccine? Who doesn't get COVID vaccine? Who lives? Who dies? Who made him God? Donald Trump, who cares about as little for public health as he does for public safety. He's the most anti-public safety, meaning crime in America, anti-law enforcement, and anti-public health president we've ever had, which is shocking considering he presided over COVID. He tries to take credit for the warp speed at which vaccines were created, vaccines that have now been effectively killed and killed off by RFK Jr. He had COVID infamously himself. And only because he got a cocktail of drugs that the average person wasn't entitled to or couldn't obtain did he survive. So he almost died once. That took a lot out of him, I'm sure. You have an unhealthy, morbidly obese person who thinks, eating fast food and swinging a golf club while the Secret Service kicks his ball into a hole and carries his balls and takes a little car from hole to hole. That's not exercise. That's not exercise. He's not carrying his own bag. He's not doing a full 18. The Secret Service are being exercised. They're working out, not him. And so his health, the health of America, are all going to be on the agenda, on the minds of Americans as they vote at the midterms. National security, how Donald Trump has mishandled the world conflicts. He's not entitled to the Nobel Peace Prize. He's closer to being indicted as a war criminal. The way he's handled Iran and Israel and Gaza, Ukraine and Russia, even India and Pakistan. I'm telling you, he's one step closer. That's why he wanted to get rid of the International Criminal Court. And he wanted to criminalize people from America that were working on the International Criminal Court because he knows he'd be public enemy number 1. He'd be on the most wanted list. So the health of America, the national security of America, the attacks on our civil liberties led by Donald Trump standing up an army that he has made in his own image to serve as a standing army against the American people. This is what's on the docket for the midterm election. And how he's handled scandals like child sex trafficking around him with Epstein. I think it's ironic that Kristi Noem, our crash test dummy of a Homeland Security director, takes to the airwaves to talk about Abrego Garcia being some sort of child predator. She works for somebody who was best friends with a child predator, who's a judge sexual abuser. Look over your shoulder, who's been accused in court of torturing children, violating statutes about torturing children and trafficking children just over the weekend. And for them to talk about and to malign the victims of the Epstein scandal, wrongs are going to be righted as we turn into the remainder of the Trump administration, I assure you. I'm glad you're here on the intersection. We got a lot more to go. Ways to support us, it's easy. You're here on the MeidasTouch Network, hit the subscribe button. Slide over. That's my slide over sound to the Legal AF YouTube channel that I do in collaboration with MeidasTouch that I curate. 10, 12 videos every day, 365, including over this long weekend. Hit the free subscribe button there. You're going to love the work that we do. I do about 4 videos a day there. Got a dozen contributors that do another 7 to 8 on all different fascinating topics. It's like a TED Talk meets a law school class, but even more entertaining on Legal AF Substack, on Legal AF YouTube. Then we have Legal AF Substack, brand new community, about 3 months old. We've already got close to 80,000 subscribers. We're doing 10, 12 postings a day. I do 2 lives a day, 2 lives where I pull together in a huddle everybody in the community. We do 2 to 3,000 people. We talk about all the issues. It's really a fascinating community. It's been my joy and my honor to help build. Come over, hit the subscribe button there as well. And then we've got our pro-democracy sponsors, and here's a word from them now. This episode of Legal AF is brought to you by Moinkbox. Did you know 4 companies control over 80% of the U.S. meat industry, and that the largest share of U.S. pork is now controlled by China? These meat giants use mobster-like tactics to crush American family farms, flooding our food supply with sketchy additives and low-quality meat. So what can you do about it? Here's where Moink comes in. Featured on Shark Tank, Moink is standing up for family farms and your food security. Their meat comes from animals raised outdoors, like nature intended. Their farmers get an honest day's pay, and Moink delivers straight to your doorstep at a price you can actually afford. This is real American meat, born, raised, and harvested right here in the USA. Moink is helping save rural America. I love it, and you will too. Join the Moink movement today, support American family farms, and join the, wait for it, Moink movement today at moinkbox.com/legalaf right now and get free bacon for a year. That's 1 year of the best bacon you'll ever taste, but only for a limited time. Spelled MOINK. box.com/legalaf. That's moinkbox.com/legalaf. The weather, it's heating up, and your nighttime bedroom temperature has a huge impact on your sleep quality. If you wake up too hot or too cold, I highly recommend you check out Miracle Made's bed sheets. Miracle Made sheets are inspired by NASA and use silver-infused fabrics that are temperature regulating, so you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long. Using silver-infused fabrics inspired by NASA, Miracle Made sheets are thermoregulating and designed to keep you at the perfect temperature all night long, no matter the weather, so you get better sleep every night. Miracle sheets are luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands, and feel as nice, if not nicer, than sheets used by some 5-star hotels. Stop sleeping on bacteria. Bacteria can clog your pores, causing breakouts and acne. Sleep clean with Miracle. Upgrade your sleep as the weather heats up. Go to trymiracle.com/legalaf to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use our promo LegalAF at checkout, you'll get a free 3-piece towel set and save an extra 20%. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/legalaf and use the code LegalAF to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/legalaf to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode. Welcome back to The Intersection with Michael Popok. You're on the MeidasTouch Network. And let's get to what we always do, which is the intersection of law and politics. Thank you for being with us. We've got over 200,000 people that join us regularly on our Tuesday night edition. Then pick us up on podcast platforms. It is a podcast. Look for The Intersection. If you watch us on YouTube, come over to the podcast platforms like Apple and Spotify. Listen to us. If you're a listener, watch us. It helps keep this show up in the top rankings, which is important to keep the content coming to you. All right, let's, and thank you to our pro-democracy sponsors. Let's move on with our checklist for today. Posse Comitatus ruling. I just interviewed Rob Bonta, the Attorney General The general who led the charge that won today, a big fat ruling, first time in history that a president has been declared to have violated the Posse Comitatus Act. For people that want to know what that is, I'll give you the elevator pitch for the Posse Comitatus Act. It means that the might of the U.S. military forces cannot be used on domestic soil for civilian law enforcement purposes. You can't turn them into a cop to use against Americans. That's at the heart of our constitutional republic. That is part of our bedrock principles, starting with the Declaration of Independence. We have not and will not allow a president to have a standing army, or in the words of Judge Breyer today, a national federal police force with the president as its chief. I mean, that's what we're watching, right? We're watching Trump before our very eyes try to build a national law enforcement, militia that he can use on domestic soil. That is anathema to everything that we're about as Americans. Our military is only supposed to be used for national security, for outward attacks, or to protect Americans, but not to use as civil law enforcement. That's what local law enforcement is for. That's what sheriffs are for, and police officers, and other groups, and the use of the National Guard by states when necessary, not the feds. That's a bridge too far. And what Judge Breyer said today, after a 3-day trial, in which he took in a lot of evidence, is that the Trump administration has clearly violated the Posse Comitatus Act by using Marines combined with federalized National Guard to conduct civilian law enforcement, searches and seizures and arrests and perimeters and traffic stops and the rest. And that is a direct violation not only of their training, but of the Posse Comitatus Act, which we've had since 1787, which stems from our breaking away from the King of England, King George, and founding America, because he had standing armies, because he used the military against American colonists, because he allowed the military without civilian control to terrorize the future Americans. And we said never again. Donald Trump is building a federal police force. He's spending $200 billion to hire tens of thousands of ICE and Border Patrol agents. He's hiring them out of high school without proper training, giving them a badge and a gun when they're 18 years old, cutting their training in half, not doing proper due diligence, using white supremacist Nazi propaganda like recruiting posters and digital media, which are all filled with Rockwell paintings of white people, talking about their heritage, talking about you want to chase illegals with your absolute boys and all sorts of other things that smack of white supremacy. There is I have no confidence at all. In fact, I'm confident the other way, that Donald Trump's going to hire, as part of this national police force, Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, Jan 6 insurrectionists, White Klansmen, Ku Klux Klansmen, and the rest. I don't think those are disqualifying credentials. I think that gets you the job in the Trump administration. He's recruiting like that's what he wants. He's using their propaganda and their tropes to get people. He got 100,000 applicants in 2 weeks. They're not screening any of them. And if you think that's not a problem, in the past, when we lowered our standards, hired people that were ill fit and borderline criminals or criminals for these positions, what did we get? Border Patrol agents who were members of drug cartels. That's happened in the past, who committed murders and sexual abuse and kidnapping. It's going to happen again under Donald Trump, because he's the opposite of in favor of law enforcement. You know, he's got this thing about all of his cabinet members who sat around on Tuesday praising the great leader from North Korea. It's nice to see your big smiling face on the Labor Department, Your Honor. Fearless leader. You know, trying to prop up his failing health in the public mind. It's all we watched. And they've got this thing that, you know, he is the law and order president. The law and order president led 1,600 insurrectionists who attacked our Capitol, tried to burn it to the ground, and tried to assassinate elected officials. He let them out the front door of the prison. And he continues with it. He settled with Ashley Babbitt's family. She was this close to leading a group of insurrectionists down the speaker's hallway to kill Nancy Pelosi and others. Her family now got $5 million for wrongful death, and she's now being given military honors by President Trump, allowed to be buried at Arlington or wherever her service that she was once a part of, as Donald Trump rewrites history. So when Judge Breyer, and I have a full hot take up on Legal AF about this and on Legal AF Substack, and I just had the interview with Rob Bonta that's going up tomorrow morning at about noon Eastern time that you should watch on Legal AF YouTube. When you have Judge Breyer saying out loud, not only that the president is forming a federal police force under his control, which is illegal, but he then gives the scenarios in the decision in which he says, what's to stop Donald Trump now? If I don't stop him with this ruling, what's to stop him from declaring that in order to promote the rules and to execute the laws around election laws, I've heard rumors that there is election fraud going on. So I need to use the federalized National Guard and the Marines to cancel elections, seize voting machines, stop mail-in balloting, absentee balloting, seizing the ballots and counting them myself or discarding them. What's to stop him from doing that? This is what Judge Breyer posed today as the potential ramifications of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals' earlier ruling that allowed Trump to commandeer the National Guard. But this new ruling by Judge Breyer is the first of its kind. It says that Donald Trump cannot, or it violates the Posse Comitatus Act, use the federal military on domestic soil for civilian law enforcement purposes. He issues an injunction. He blocks the Trump administration. He declares it. He makes the findings. He stayed the case for about till next Friday to give the parties time to go to seek their appeals. But this needed to be done and will be the blueprint, this 52 pages, for future judges on this area. So that was a good ruling. Not the only great ruling against the Trump administration. He's on a losing streak. I mean, every week I say he's on a losing streak, but it's gotten worse. We just had the federal Circuit Court of Appeals rule 7-4, striking down all of Donald Trump's tariffs, 2/3 of them anyway, all the reciprocal tariffs against the 150 nations, and the trafficking tariffs against Canada, China, and Mexico related to fentanyl, ruling that he doesn't have the power under the International Emergency Economic Emergencies Powers Act, IEPA. That nowhere does that give the president the power to tariff. Congress has to give that power expressly, and they haven't. They have to list it in the statute of delegation. They haven't, and struck it down. Now, they've stayed that order till October to get to the United States Supreme Court, and you've got Donald Trump saying it's going to be fiscal ruin if this statute is struck, if my use of the tariffs is struck down. Get ready. I think even this MAGA Supreme Court, I think it's 50-50, but I think there's a shot that they're going to find he violated IEPA. Now, he has other tariff powers that he can exercise. He just didn't. He used IEPA, the International Economic Emergency Powers Act. There's other statutes he could have used, but they were harder, required findings, required time. So he used the statute. You live and die by the sword, my man. So in the meantime, he continues to collect the money to wallpaper over the big hole in the economy caused by his failed economic policies. This week, and I cover every week, is the first video on Legal AF is usually my economic analysis. And this week we get the jobs numbers, we get the economic slowdown numbers, consumer confidence numbers. It's going to be a bad week for Donald Trump and the economy. Yeah. And Donald Trump just wants to try to get a hold of the Federal Reserve, try to fire Lisa Cook because she purportedly committed mortgage fraud. She gets due process. She gets to prove her case. She gets to prove that that's not sufficient grounds, even if it were true, to be removed as a Federal Reserve governor, to give Donald Trump control over the interest rates. And I don't even understand how getting control of the interest rates is going to happen by him firing Lisa Cook. Even his own two governors on the Federal Reserve don't believe the interest rate should be cut that much. Donald Trump says, I want 2 points off the Federal Reserve interest rate. I want it from 4.5%. I want it down to 2.5%. Even his own board of governors says that's ridiculous, that it should only be cut a quarter of a point. And this is all to cover up for Donald Trump's, again, failed economy. We're not seeing a power economy of the Trump administration. It's just a failed economy. And so far we've got the ruling by Judge Breyer about the Posse Comitatus Act against Donald Trump, coming on the heels of the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals ruling that a tariff scheme is unconstitutional and illegal, coming on the heels of Judge Sparkle Suknanen in D.C. taking 76 children without due process who were tried to be deported in the middle of the night at 1 o'clock in the morning. She got them off the plane with 15 separate orders over the course of 24 hours. And what does Donald Trump do in response? Besides moving the Space Force from Colorado to Alabama, he announces that we're at war with Venezuela, bombing what he alleges was a Maduro drug boat with 11 people on it. That's just a distractor. Is anybody fooled for that in the press conference today? A distractor from a failed administration, a failing human being physically and mentally? That's exactly what we're watching. But this is what Donald Trump does with his timing when things go badly for him in his various policy pronouncements. So this is where we are at the end of another week on The Intersection. I appreciate you being here. We cover it all. In between the Tuesdays Intersection, we've got, of course, Legal AF, the podcast, and Legal AF, the YouTube channel, where you can get 10 or 11 videos, 10, 12 minutes apiece, kind of mini podcasts, great learning tools, very informative, hopefully entertaining at the intersection of law and politics. Subscribe to Legal AF Substack, a new community we're building. We've already got almost 80,000 people there. We're doing live reporting there in real time that we can't do even on YouTube. That's a free subscription as well. If you want to, if people say, how can we support what you do on all these channels, Popok, and all the other contributors? It's easy. You can become a paid subscriber on Legal AF Substack. Cost you about, I don't know, $5 to $7 a month, something like that. I assure you, your return on investment will be great. I will give you the content that will blow your mind for less than $7 a month, right there. So I'm glad you're here. Support our pro-democracy sponsors. Support The Intersection as a podcast. Watch us here. Leave comment. Come over. Give us reviews over on on Apple Pod and Spotify. Listen to us there. It helps with the algorithm, keeps us on the air. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of MeidasTouch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok firm, fighting for your justice every step of